Hi, welcome to the channel. This is Moyna Bass Fishes. I'm Jim Moyna. In this video, we are going to recap and review this 2024 Bassmaster Open on Lake Okeechobee. I finished 51st place out of 225 anglers, which is kind of an underperformance. I felt like I was in the area where there was fish to do better, and I just kind of made the miscalculation. What was that miscalculation? Because this is probably my biggest takeaway from this event as to where I went wrong, and that was on day two. I think there was a lot more spawning fish that showed up around the beds, and the fish got really loose to cover, and I was fishing in too heavy a cover, and those quality fish just weren't there. They were out in the loose stuff where the sun can, a lot of times fish will put their beds next to little isolated clumps in that, a little cattail clump, a little bulrush clump. But for the most part, the sun can get at the bed. So where I was doing a lot of my fishing, especially on day two, was in the heavier stuff. I mean, you get inside the masses of cattails and that, and in there, a bass is not as likely to put a bed there because there's just too much shade. And most beds you'll find have quite a bit of sunlight exposure. Maybe not completely, but quite a bit. So that's where I went wrong. And how did I end up down that path? Well, on the first day of the tournament, I started out fishing out, and I fished most of the day fishing the outer, looser stuff in the open, and catching some fish, not a lot. I think I only caught like 8 or 9 keepers the first day, but I did have a 5-pounder, and he was I threw a Nico rig up against this I think it's pennywort, just mat of pennywort, and he just shot out from under that and grabbed it, and I caught that one. So I don't know if that fish was necessarily a bedding fish. He was in a bedding area, but I don't think he was necessarily, or she was necessarily thinking about bedding. And then probably with about an hour to go on day one, maybe an hour and a half to go, I just started going into some of the heavier stuff. And then I caught my second biggest one, which was like a 3 1/4, 3 1/2 maybe. And then, plus I caught some other fish. And then my coingler lost like a 3 1/2 pounder up in there. So, and nobody was fishing that way. There was lots of pressure in the area I was fishing, but nobody was up inside the stuff like I was. So, so that got me thinking maybe that's what I can key on, and I'll be away from the fishing pressure, and I'll be fishing fish that other people aren't. So on day two, I really went with that approach. I started out in some looser stuff in the morning, just thinking fish will be out roaming around with the sun low, and then there was a little bit of cloud cover in the morning. And so I started out in the looser stuff and fished that way for about an hour and a half, and caught some smaller fish, some small keepers, but no quality keepers. So, and then at some point I just started getting in, after about an hour and a half or so of that, I just, maybe 2 hours at the most, I just started getting up inside everything. Because by then, everything on the outside had been hit already, because that's how much pressure was in the area. So, but it didn't stop the guys from catching fish all day in that area out on the outside. So that was probably my big mistake. Probably needed to fish the outer, looser stuff, because that's where the beds were. And like I said, it could be a single bulrush or a single cattail you see above water, but then also there'll be just boggy clumps of dead cattails below the surface. Some of those you could see, then other ones you'd have to use your forward sonar to spot that stuff. Plus there'd be sticks, like flooded bushes, or just like these bushy wooded things. So there'd be those two that were out in the open, and of course they were up in the heavier stuff too. So, but if you can find any of that on your forward sonar, some of the sticks were above water, like the cattails and bulrushes would be, but then some of that stick stuff, you couldn't see it. It'd be below water, and the fish would be, you know, there. And we're talking about like 4 foot of water, where these, you know, 3 to 4 foot, where I was seeing most of the bedding action. So that was kind of the kind of area. And of course, when the fish spawn here, you know, it always seems like the key on Okeechobee is find where the clear water is, and then you just kind of work from there. That you don't have to be in the clearest water to catch the fish, but you definitely do not want to be you can catch fish in the clearest water, but in the dirtiest water out here, avoid that as much as you can, because that's a real hard place to catch fish. You'll find all kinds of bulrushes and cattails out here, and some really just milky, just sediment suspended kind of looking color, just nasty looking color water. And it's impossible to get bites in that kind of water. So you don't want to be in that. You can be in the clearest water, but then you can also be in just some of the off-color stuff and still catch them. In fact, I'm thinking that off-color stuff might be, sometimes that might be the best. I mean, not the super clear water, but just the next level dirtier seems to be a really good place to be. I mean, and that's not just this year, but it seems like the bigger bites come out of that color water, and I know that, and for some reason I don't have the discipline to I'm always gravitating towards the clearest clear, and you don't have to be in that water to get bit here. So anyhow, as far as practice goes, you know, I did a practice video every day. The main theme of this tournament would have been, it's a 5-day practice, so we had 2 days of nice weather, and the bad front came through and kind of shut things down for the last 3 practice days. But it was getting slightly warmer every day, and you know, we had sunshine the last couple. You know, the fish just got shocked by that cold front. But by the first day of the tournament, a lot of those fish were out looking to spawn again, and the bite picked up. And then the second day, the bite was even stronger, which happens out here. Most tournament lakes, usually the lake gets pressured, and the catches kind of fall off a little bit from day one. But here, because the way these fish behave, they actually, and this happened in the Toyota tournament too, that was a week ago. The conditions just got better on day 2, and their day 2 catch was better than day 1, and the same thing happened here as well. So, which I kind of had a feeling that was going to happen, the way, especially when I got out there on the day 2 yesterday with that overcast, and I wasn't having to wear my Blackfish Rage storm suit, which is a really nice warm weather suit. I mean, I didn't even bring in the boat because we were plenty warm to start the morning, and so I knew the bite was going to be on. And after that first hour and a half, I only had a few little ones. I was kind of worried. So, but anyways, yeah. So my total weight, day 1 I had 1411. No, day 1 I had 1410. Day 2 I had 14 even. And so what is that? 2810 was my total for 51st place. I was 40th place after day 1 with 1410, and then, I mean, normally with following that up with 14 pounds would have got me in the money, but not on this lake under these conditions. They pay down 45 places. That was like a little over a pound out of that. So, but gosh, what was I going to say? There was an important point I was going to make. Maybe I'll just circle back to that at some point. So let's get into the, gosh, I wish I just can't speak and think at the same time, I guess. So anyhow, let's get into the rods here and the selection. This is kind of I've got 10 rods behind me set up for Lake Okeechobee, and at any one time this, you don't know which rod's going to be the rod to have in your hand to catch the most fish, the biggest fish. So you got to have all these ready to go, and depending on the weather is which ones you want to go with. So I'll just start with the tournament, and what I caught most of my fish on the tournament was what's called a Nico rig, and I throw that on spinning with 12-pound fluorocarbon. And a Nico rig is basically just a straight tail worm with an O-ring. This worm's kind of beat up, so that normally that O-ring would be snug on there, but it's, you can see that worm is kind of, this was game day worm, and it's basically ready to be discarded. So anyways, and then with the Nico rig worm, you insert a lead weight into there, into the plastic of that worm, like that. Of course, I always put it all the way in there so it disappears, and you just cast that out and let it fall and fish it really slow, and then you twitch it every once in a while. And that's when you know the fish are in beds. That's like out here, that's what I went with. And with the hook, make sure you use a hook with weed guards, especially with all these cattails and stuff. I still constantly getting snagged on that stuff. You get snagged on the sticks, the cattails, bulrushes. I mean, that maybe there's a better way to do it, I don't know, but I really like that Nico rig. It seems to get bites. Then there's another thing you can do is the traditional Texas rig. That's where you get the sliding sinker, and that setup. This is a Billy Rub's Tricky D worm, which is a nice fish catching plastic worm. So, and that same thing, you just try to drag that through the beds. That sinker's 3/16, because the bottom's so silty here. You don't want to go too heavy, because then if the bottom's so silty that you're just going to be dragging into the silty soup with too heavy of a sinker. So 3/16 is what I've always heard is the best deal to go with, and so I'll go along with that logic. It makes sense. So those are basically the two baits that I throw around the beds, and it was a real challenge in the heavier cattails, because I couldn't get bit flipping a bait, which I'll show you those in a minute. I could not get bit for whatever reason, and so I had to go with the Nico rig right here. And so as I'd be casting, I'd be making I couldn't get bit on a short cast, because every time I turned on the trolling motor to move another 30 feet, you know, the trolling motor prop would be like just banging on cattails and making all kinds of noise. So I'd have to make like medium range casts. So I'd be casting over like loosely stranded cattails into pockets behind it, and try to hit little lanes. So I was just constantly, so then you'd get bit, and then you'd have to get the fish up through all that, which it's not easy. I mean, if I would have got like a 7-pounder, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, well, I do know what I'd done. You just hook him up and let him do his thing, and then just go after him with the boat. You get the boat to the fish, and hopefully you just hope that he stays hooked, because he's going to wrap you up in some stuff. The fluorocarbon I use, Gamma, it's 12-pound. That stuff is super strong, and if you get a fish wrapped around like a cattail or something, there's enough play in that cattail that as he struggles, it's not like he's pulling on like a super tight no give situation. There's always a little give in them cattails or bulrushes or whatever. So he's probably not going to break that 12-pound gallon. That gallon's really strong. They label it 12-pound, but I've straightened like hooks with that thing. So with this line, so it's strong. As long as you tie your knot right, it's gonna. I mean, just make sure you tie good knots on whatever knot you tie with any type of line. All right, so that's the bedding thing right there. Now, this flipping's always huge, so I'll just run through what I have. I've got 2 punch rigs. This would be for the heaviest cover. It's a 2-ounce tungsten sinker, and it's Texas rigged. It's pegged, so I have that. Then I have another punch rig. This is with the 1 ounce, a little bit smaller bait, pegged as well, tungsten sinker. So why do I have a 1 ounce and why do I have a 2 ounce? Well, there's different degrees of thickness. Some mats you just flat out you'd need like a 1 pound sinker to get through them. So the heaviest stuff I'll use the 2 ounce. Then it's like, well, why don't you just use the 2 ounce for everything? It's like, I don't like using the 2 ounce because your hookup ratio is not going to be quite as good as with the 1 ounce. Just that extra weight in there, that thickness, the thickness and bulkiness of that sinker is going to slightly impede the hook, you know, getting a direct or a solid hookup. Whereas the 1 ounce, and then when they jump and stuff, you don't have it, and they jump and shake their head, which a lot of times they don't when you're punching because you're pulling them. They really don't get a chance to jump because they're under a mat. So I guess never mind that. But also with the 1 ounce, you just, I just feel like I get better hookups with the 1 ounce. So in the thinner stuff, no, I mean I'm still punching mats with it, but the density of the mat, still allows that 1 ounce to do the job you want it to do. The 1 ounce will not work in the heavier stuff. Then I go to the 2 ounce. Now, if I'm just fishing straight up reeds or cattails and I want to flip, then I got a jig. Here's an all-terrain tackle jig, and I'll go with the 3/4 ounce there. I also have, I didn't pull that out. Let's see. Here it is right here. One other flipping option is to take like a little ringworm bait like this and Texas rig that. That's on a 1/2 ounce bait, and of course that's in the looser, sparser stuff. And when I was here last year, I caught a 6-pounder and like a 5-pounder on that in the tournament when I was here last year. So on that thing, although it didn't produce this year. I mean, when I got in those, like yesterday when I got into those thicker clumps of cattails, I flipped that quite a bit, and I just could not get bit with it. I don't know what the deal is. And then I flipped the jig, that they went bite that, but then if I picked up the Nico rig, it was such a pain in the ass with that Nico rig because it was constantly, because you'd have to throw over all this stuff all the time and trying to get it, and trying, just to work a little pocket, and then when you're done, then you'd have to like lift it up over all this, you'd have to reel it over all these cattails, and the cattails are all bent over, and a bunch of them are bent over, and there's 90 degrees, and then there's floating clumps of cattails that have floated up, and they're all laying over, and trying to get it through all that was just a nightmare. In fact, a friend of mine, his name's Dwayne Anderson. He termed this type of fishing a long time ago. He calls it, and this is what kept going through my mind yesterday. He calls when you get into the really thick stuff where nobody else is. He calls that Star Trek fishing, because in Star Trek the famous line is at the beginning of the show is to go where no one else has gone before. So it's Star Trek fishing. Copyright Dwayne Anderson, Tackle Busters Bass Club. All right, here's another flipping bait, and I didn't even tie this on until the tournament. I just remember a long time, I didn't know, you know, because I still wasn't exactly sure how I was going to catch them on day one of the tournament. Uh, I felt like if I ended up into some dirtier water, I mean, not all the way dirty because I'm just not going to fish that period, but into some more of the intermediate stuff, I just wanted just something that's kind of showy. And I remember a long time ago, I got into some water like that here and actually caught some fish with this tube. And I also got a rattle in there, so try to make it obnoxiously gaudy kind of a flipping bait. Never had a bite on it because I didn't even fish it really, because I never got into that color water. Okay, so now, and the flipping, all that flipping stuff is really good. Right after cold fronts, that's typically when that flipping bite is the best. So those were the cold front type baits, which the fish kind of progressed out of that for the most part. I mean, I'm sure somebody did well flipping because there's just so much flipping to be done out here. All right, now there's two, actually three, but I got two. I mean, when it comes to moving baits, I guess a Florida staple would be the swimming worm. So here, it's just a Texas rig worm, 3/16 ounce sinker, and it's got this flapping kind of a tail on there. It's a swimming worm, and that's just something I don't do much of, but I thought I'd just show you that. They do a lot of that here in Florida, and I don't do it much, so I don't have a lot of confidence in it. In fact, in the practice, I didn't throw it much at all in practice. Probably should have. Then, of course, a chatterbait. It's always good grass bait, although there's no hydrilla or eelgrass out here, hardly at all. So I think it's best suited, the chatterbait is best suited for that type of environment. But it just, that stuff ain't out here in Okeechobee. And then, now yesterday, on day 2 of the tournament, like I said, we had a little bit of overcast right over in the morning, and the water was warmer, or the overnight low wasn't as cold as it was the previous nights, especially in those last few practice days. So I thought I'd give the topwater bite a chance. And in fact, in the Toyota tournament, I guess the winner, I think, caught a bunch on topwater. So there's 2 topwaters, and I've always loved the double propped bait, especially around the spawn. So with that, so you got a prop on the nose and then a prop on the back, and I just love fishing that bait. And I actually caught like 3 fish on that yesterday morning before the sun came out, and those were yeah, so I love to fish it all day, but I put it down when the sun came out. I put it down just because I feel like that's what I should do. And then plus I didn't get a bite, you know, I didn't get any more bites, so it's time to put it down. And then, so with that prop bait, of course, you fish that around the sparser stuff. Okay, you're casting through open water, and again, you're getting fish that are in and around spawning beds with that bait. And then if you get into the heavier stuff, then of course a weedless frog kind of a bait. So that I threw that a little bit, like when I get around some of those heavy. Oh, I know what I was gonna. Okay, when I get into the heavy cover, you know, floating cover, throw that. So what I was gonna say about the thing I was going to say that I forgot about was back to this discussion of openness for where the spawners want to be versus the heavy cover. So at the end of the day yesterday, in the last like 30 minutes, I was back in the heavy cattails, and it actually opened up maybe like 1/3 of an acre in size. It wasn't far off the main open area where everybody's fishing, but it was back in. You had to fight your way in there a little bit, but it did open up back in there, and that's where I actually saw a pair of fish swim by me, a male and a female, and I might have caught those because I power pulled down and waited for them if they were to come back, and I saw the direction they went, and I kept casting over there. Then suddenly I caught one, which was like a male size, like a 1 3/4 to 2 pounder, which was like the size of the male I saw, and then I threw right back over there, and I caught a 3-pound, one of the 3/3-pounders I had, which would have been the female. And again, like I said, this was in one of these open areas. They were out in the open, where you just have sparse cattails and whatever. And so then, so that was a nice call. So now I had 1 3-pounder from earlier that was in the heavier cover, and then a bunch of 2-pounders. So now I have 2 3-pounders, and then about 10 minutes later in that open area, I caught another 3-pounder. So now I had 2 3-pounders that I caught in the last 30 minutes, which was nice to have. And then I caught another one, not a 3-pounder though. It was a male. It was like another 2 1/4, 2.5 pounder. So what I ended up weighing was like 3 3-pounders and 2 2.5 pounders. What I weighed yesterday to give me the 14 pounds. All right, so there you have it. That was my experience here on Lake Okeechobee for 2024 at the Bassmaster Open. Trying to think if there's anything else I have to say about this. Just a little disappointed because I was in a good section of the lake, and I zigged when I said I should have just stayed the course. What I was doing, I mean, I don't know, once I went inside to the inside stuff, and all these guys kept hitting all the stuff that I knew that I liked out in the outer thinner stuff. I'm like, why? I kept thinking, why should I go out there? At least I'm catching. I caught a lot of fish. Like I said, on day 1 I caught like 8 keepers, and I guess I haven't mentioned this, but on day 2 I caught like 25 keepers, but they all kept coming in as small ones. So, and I did see there was one other little opening that I came across back in the cattails about midday, and I did see like a 6 or 7-pounder back there. So I kept having that hope in my mind that I was going to finally, come across one of those, and I never, that would bite and I'd catch it, but I never did. So, anyways, that is the entire recap for this year. Thanks for watching, and where am I off to next? I don't know what I'm gonna. Well, I do know. The next tournament's on Lake Washita, Arkansas, which will be another Bassmaster Open, and that tournament will be 2 weeks from 2 days ago. So like the finals for that tournament would be 2 weeks from today, which today is February 3rd. Over.